Welcome back. Here we are, Youngzers, episode 2, jam-packed show. Today we got mostly football for you. I'm here with my older sibling, Andrew McDermott. Ryan Roberts is not on the call today, R squared on the hot seat. Couldn't make it, prior obligations, but a little preview. We got Steelers training camp. I know you have your full 53-man roster ready. It's the
Right.
hot topic among the crowd, so we'll be getting into that. I don't have that much yet. A little Pirates talk. Maybe we'll keep that limited, not too many bright spots recently. Penn State, Pitt football, a little bit there, and then tad bit of Penguins and a new segment at the end. Everyone's excited about the Idiot of the Week, which we'll have a poll for the fans that will turn into Moron of the Month. So we're really excited about that. Anything from you before we get started here, Andrew?
First day of pads for Steelers, so pads are popping. Let's just get right into it, huh?
Pads are popping, low man wins. I think we should go right into Steelers training camp. We just going in the white whale right off the bat. QB battle. What are you seeing so far?
Well, the big update from today was Kenny Pickett was running second team and Mason Rudolph was running third team. Didn't look too well. I think Mitch Trubisky's in the driver's seat. I mean, I don't want to overreact with anything. It's the first day of padded practice, but you'd have to imagine Trubisky was kind of the favorite. If they had any confidence in Mason Rudolph, they wouldn't have signed Mitch Trubisky. They wouldn't have drafted Kenny Pickett. And everyone's making a big deal out of Kenny Pickett, performing pretty poorly right off the bat in training camp. But you have to look, he was running with a third team offensive line, those kind of weapons. You can't really put much stock into it. So if he performs well, probably in training camp, I could see, the hype around Mason Rudolph. And then, Matt Canada says he has a legitimate shot to win the QB battle. I don't see it. Mason's one of those guys, you put the pads on, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. If it was a quarterback battle for looking good in shorts, he'd probably on the fast track to the Hall of Fame. But once you put the pads on, Mason's rattled. And, just as a side note, if you're a starting quarterback in the NFL, I don't think you can get beat with your own helmet and then start, be a franchise quarterback start. That's just a tough look in general. I don't care how many years ago it was. But Mason Rudolph's become a meme at this point. How can you really rally around a guy
I
like that?
mean, whenever I'm running the socials, he's the easiest guy to meme on. I keep going back to whenever I think he got concussed. Yeah, got absolutely blown up, and Duck Hodges had to come in. He was getting scraped off the field. They cut his face mask off. I mean, that was a tough look. He's looking like the great Gazoo out there. So, I mean, I think he has the least to lose out of everybody. Out of the three quarterbacks. He has nothing to lose. He can just walk in and do whatever. No one has any expectations. So I think we'll see a lot this week. We saw a little bit last week during the first week, no pads, but some 7-on-7 touchdown drills. So, I mean, he didn't do bad in that. I mean, I think he threw a few picks, but I think he has the least to lose, which that might give him some confidence there because he's playing for a job at this point.
Yeah, and you look at training camp, a lot of it is the smoke screens that teams throw up, like saying, oh, Mitch Trubisky has a chance to win the starting job. Meanwhile, they drafted another quarterback in the seventh round, Chris Oladokun. He hasn't played at all. He hasn't got any reps. But still, if you can try and if you're the Steelers and try and swing Mason Rudolph for a fifth round pick as camp's ending, because there's going to be some injuries on some teams where they're going to need a backup. One example I could think of, pieces moving would be Trey Lance is the starter in San Francisco now, and they're trying to unload Jimmy G. I could see San Francisco sending a late round pick and just getting, a established veteran backup behind Trey Lance, because I think I'm pretty sure the other quarterback on their roster is like Nate Sudfeld, and you'd rather have Mason Rudolph as the backup if you're another team. But if you're the Steelers in the position you're in, you invest a first round pick in Kenny Pickett. You signed Mitch Trubisky. The writing was on the wall, probably no matter how well you play in the preseason.
I honestly, they probably didn't think Pickett would last that long in the draft, and they'd have Mason Rudolph as the backup and one of the other four guys coming in maybe the late second round even. They would maybe use a second round pick on one of those guys. But Pickett was there and he slid, so I think why, like you said, why draft a guy in the first round?
Yeah.
For a first round pick in the NFL, that's probably one of the most valuable picks in sports. You're not going to waste it. The Steelers aren't stupid. They draft very well, so there's a reason they took Pickett. I do think he'll be second string. Mason, he's on his way out of town. He's packing his bags. He might be
Yeah.
on the way to the CFL or the Fan Controlled Football League. We'll be memeing on him there. So I got nothing else to say about the QBs. What about you?
Yes. So just going through for my for right now, I have my three quarterbacks as Trubisky, Pickett, and Rudolph making the 53-man roster, but I do think Rudolph gets moved. It all depends. Now this is just the first look, and barely any training camps went on, but this is just the gut feeling from the off season and typically what the Steelers do. They're going to carry three quarterbacks. If you have a QB that you haven't given any reps to yet, in the preseason or 7-on-7s, anything, that's kind of an indication that they're either going to roll with those three guys or they could maybe try and sign a veteran backup like they typically do. But I think this is one where it's, on offense, there's a lot that's going to shake out. And I think this is going to be one of the ones that there's going to be at least one move before the end of training camp.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot to see. We've seen one day in pads and a week of just non-contact, basically. So I think we'll see a lot more once the preseason games start. That's when I think the whole quarterback situation is going to shake out.
Yeah, especially with Matt Canada being able to put in his offense where you want a more mobile quarterback. Trubisky and Pickett are pretty mobile, and that doesn't mean like they're like a Michael Vick, but they can at least move around. Meanwhile, Mason looks like he's stuck in mud trying to make the reads get out of the pocket. He just doesn't have, he's more of the Big 12 quarterback. He went to Oklahoma State where it's the air raid, basically. You're just throwing it deep, praying. That's what him and James Washington did. But in the NFL, you need to have now with the game evolving a mobile quarterback, and that's just another negative for him. Yeah.
We can't be starting with a guy with cement shoes, so I think he's done. But
I'd watch Ben Roethlisberger trip over his own feet the last 2 years. I don't want to see another guy trying to shuffle out of the pocket.
That could spell bad news. Moving on, the receiver core. What are you looking at here?
So this is one of the ones I had my first tweak after just going through it. I mean, Deontay Johnson looks like he's still going to be a Steeler. I think there's a very low chance they trade him, so he'll be on the team, no doubt. Chase Claypool, George Pickens, and Calvin Austin, two of the biggest, eye openers so far. I think George Pickens is going to be an absolute stud this year. Calvin Austin just has the speed where I think is the first day 7-on-7s. He had a 60-yard touchdown off a little bubbles. And then you have Gunnar Olszewski, and I think the last wide receiver spot, it goes to Anthony Miller. He's been making plays so far, and people forget that he was with Mitch Trubisky in Chicago. So I think if they go 6 receivers, I think Miller locks up that 6th spot.
Yeah. If you're Deontay, I'm trying to get on the field as fast as possible. These young guys, they're showing up to play. They might be taking touches from him, and in a contract year like this, could affect. He wants that Debo money. He's not getting Debo money. He's holding out for Debo money, and I don't think he's ever going to get that.
He'll get it, but it won't be from the Steelers. The Packers make a lot of sense where they're very thin at receiver, and I'm pretty sure teams would have to reach out to the Steelers and kind of negotiate a contract, like a sign and trade, before he gets dealt. But if you could trade him for a 2nd-round pick, maybe sign a veteran, or I don't know what you do there. It's a tough situation for the Steelers to be in because he's their clear number 1 receiver, but they could make it a lot easier if Pickens has, starts off the year really well, if Claypool takes that next step. There's a lot of factors that are going into that, but it's just a weird situation for the Steelers to be in with Deontay right now.
Yeah, I think he needs to pick it up, but the Steelers draft receivers so well that Pickens is looking really good. They said his weakness when he was at Georgia was the catch and run, but he's working on staying out of the air a little bit and making, getting those yards after the catch. So I think he'll be all right. And
one of my favorite things about Pickens too is he loves blocking. So that's like the Hines Ward type where obviously you can't be crackbacking and breaking Keith Rivers' jaw like Hines Ward that 1 year, but any receiver that's going to be throwing those hands downfield, you love to see it. Especially that's like part of the Steeler tradition right there. Receivers that are just scrappy, getting out there blocking. You love to see it.
I think we'll see some flashes of that from my boy Gunner too. I'm all in on anybody named Gunner. I don't think he'll get many touches, but maybe special teams.
He's a big special teams guy. I mean, that's where he's going to make his money there. But if you look at George Pickens in college, it's kind of funny. He got suspended for just absolutely teeing off on a cornerback.
Yeah, he's got that dog in him. That's what we need.
Yeah, he's got that dog in him. And he messes around that. I forget which game it was. The quarterback was on his sidelines. He just sprayed him with a water bottle and was laughing. Which
I'm all in on that too.
you mature a little bit, but still, throwing hands at the corner. George Pickens might become my favorite Steeler before the end of the year.
All right, do you want to mix tight ends in with the receivers too?
Yeah,
Who
so
you got on
tight
that?
end. Yeah, the first two tight ends are Fryermuth, obviously, and Zach Gentry. That's a pretty solid 1-2 combo there. And then Connor Hayward has been looking decent in camp. Late round pick, but he's definitely going to stick. He can play a lot of roles. He played running back for a while in college, so he can play tight end. He can line up in a lot of different places. Someone made a comparison from camp that he's like Juju, which I didn't really get that. I guess
Yeah,
put him out in the slot, maybe
two
just how
different
he,
play types.
yeah, how he does when he touches the ball. But I had Kevin Rader on there originally because the Steelers do like to keep those blocking tight ends around. But I think it'll come back if you're looking at the skill positions between a tight end like Kevin Rader or Anthony Miller making the team. That's just my initial guess to how the roster shapes out.
Gentry, is he getting any touches there or
He's more of a blocking tight
more
end, but
blocking?
with this offense, I mean, he's what
Who
six.
knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, he's a big guy, so I'm sure he'll have his opportunities, no doubt about it.
Well, with the run game, they'll probably stuff him in. I think
Yeah,
Najee's going to get the wheels run off him this year. But
yeah,
that's where Connor Hayward will come in too. He ran all over Penn State.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like he could be a nice utility man on offense. I think that's what he's going to be used for. As long as he stays healthy, because he had a great play in camp today and he got rolled up on. He's covered in ice and I think
Yeah.
wrapped up a ton. So
Another minor injury was Najee in practice. They say got his foot stepped on or something. They held him out just
yeah.
as a precaution. But we just switch over to the running backs real quick. Najee's obviously the locked in number one running back, and then
Mm-hmm.
behind him it's getting a little dicey. If he's out, the recently signed Jeremy McNichols hasn't practiced in a couple days due to an injury. You have Benny Snell, who's available. He's a special teamer. I think he makes the roster. But that third running back, I don't think Anthony McFarland makes the team this year. One of the things you have to be in the NFL is available, and he really hasn't been. He's been injured quite a bit. Hasn't really seen the field, even with Matt Canada's offense, who was his coach in college at Maryland. And if you look at the type of player he is, where he's more the gadget guy, speed guy, change of pace guy, they just drafted Calvin Austin, who's basically,
Mm-hmm.
and even Connor Hayward to some extent, that can line up in different positions. So I'd say he's on the outside looking in, and then it'll come down for that third running back between Jeremy McNichols, Mateo Durant, Jalen Warren, a couple of undrafted guys, but they might go with the veteran route. Jordan Howard was in for a workout, so we'll see who sticks on the roster, but I'm not too sold with that.
Or do you think they'll even sign a third running back? Because none of those names really entice me. Do you think they'll go out and pick somebody up out of
Uh,
a worry that Najee will get hurt or something like that?
that's what I mean. I mean, I believe I don't. I'd have to look at who's out there. None of the names really excite me. The undrafted guys definitely have a chance. It'll depend. That's one position where I think it'll depend a lot on the preseason and the reps. Durant and Warren both play special teams. They can both, they're cheap too. So that's another thing you look at when
Mm-hmm.
you're roster. Even though you have salary, your salary cap's not up against the cap and you're good to go there. But after Harrison Snell, maybe you take one. Willie Parker was an undrafted guy. So those guys are out there, and running backs, that's one where you see more often than not in the NFL. A lot of undrafted guys or late round picks that make an impact. So that's who right now, that's who I'd look at. None of the really outside options like Latavius Murray, Jordan Howard, none of that really excites me. So an undrafted guy could be the third string running back as well.
Mm-hmm. Going back to Najee though, I'm excited for this year. He seems like he's locked in. Comment that I saw, he's getting interviewed. He's going with no visor this year. He said, "I want to look them in the eyes." So I think he's in a big year. He's in year two, and he's saying he's gonna step up as a leader already. I'm getting some Marshawn Lynch vibes from him. I think he's gonna take that next step this year and be pretty solid. So
Absolutely. You
talk
take
about
you take your visor off. Youngzers are going to love you right off the bat. He's
yeah.
our fan favorite, but you take off the visor, you just elevated yourself to another level in the eyes of every drunk guy at Permani's eating some pierogies at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday, loving it.
Yeah. That's like a lineman with no sleeves. They love all that.
Oh yeah.
So moving on the line. Nothing too interesting there, right? Left guard battle, Dotson and Green, right? What do you have in
Yeah,
that depth area?
I think Dotson wins it, but this was one of the ones where I looked at the roster, just breaking it down, and I think that's the one I had the least concern with. I think they keep 4 tackles, Dan Moore Jr. and Chucks start.
Mm-hmm.
John LeGlue and Joe Haig, they can both play tackle or guard. So those are kind of the swing tackles, guys that could kick inside that you like to have as depth in case of injuries. At guard, James Daniels was one of the big signings for the offensive line coming over from the Chicago Bears. And then Dotson and Green will battle it out. I think Dotson wins it, but it's wide open. Kendrick Green basically admitted he didn't want to play center last year. So I'm sure he can play. There's no way he can play guard worse than he played center. So that's at least something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And then at center, they also signed Mason Cole, who is a veteran that should shore up the line, and then backing him up would be J.C. Hassenauer. So it's pretty much the same as last year, just adding in Daniels and Cole, really.
So you think the line will improve this year, or are they going to still be a little shoddy here and there?
The biggest thing when you're looking at offensive lines is cohesion and chemistry and just playing together. So if they can all stay healthy throughout training camp and the preseason, I think they are going to be, at least a step above they were last year, which they definitely need to be in terms of establishing the run game to open up the passing game. It's just football 101.
And obviously they're going to take a big step with a more mobile quarterback, no matter who's under center. So
yeah,
I think that'll be a big step for them.
Yeah,
but
take pressure off them. Absolutely.
That's pretty much the whole offense. I have nothing else on the offense.
Yeah.
So you gonna move over.
Still hanging around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it, really. Yeah.
Then switch on over to the defense. We got where you want to start?
We'll start with the D line. We'll start in the trenches.
D-line? Do we want to start with the big story coming off the D line, the beef between Hayward and Big Ben?
Or, I think Ben just needs to shut up and just.
He took a step back too. He took a step back. He backtracked on his comments. So that's a dub for Hayward right there. He's the big leader on defense. I think he's gonna have a big year. So
yeah, Hayward's 100% the leader of the team. So he's going to war with his guys. I mean, I honestly think he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. He gets overlooked quite a bit. Aaron Donald's obviously one of the greatest, defensive linemen of all time. But if Aaron Donald's not in the mix, Cam Hayward has just been one of the most consistently, dominant defensive linemen that the NFL's seen in the recent, even in the recent time. So I think he has another big year. He's the leader. He's the big dog. He's the guy everyone's looking to. He's mentoring. And with Stephon Tuitt out, retiring, and he's out of the picture now, I think, Hayward takes especially his leadership role to another level.
Yep, they're stepping up. They're focusing on the run game because the run game, defending the run game last year is a big issue for us.
Yeah, and losing Tyson Alualu was a bigger deal than people realized, just because they didn't really have that backup D tackle that was primarily a run stuffer. Not saying Tyson Alualu was any Casey Hampton or anything like that, but he was definitely a key cog because look who you had to lean to. Chris Wormley's more of an outside guy that had to play the inside a little bit. He's more of a rusher. He's not a big, a stronger guy like that. They brought Montravius Adams in, who actually played pretty well for them under the circumstances they were in. But now you have Larry Ogunjobi coming in that his physical failed, I believe it was with the Bengals or the Bears, one of the two. I get that mixed up. But the Steelers got him on a 1-year deal, and I think he's going to be really good for this team. Isaiah Loudermilk's going to take another step. They got DeMarvin Leal in the 3rd round, who is going to be more of a development guy because he was another one of those guys that was kind of a tweener. But apparently he's been looking good in camp. And then you have Chris Wormley and Montravius Adams. But, Carlos Davis is in the mix too. He's been having a strong camp so far. His brother Khalil Davis has been too. So there's going to be a lot for the defensive line, whether they carry 6 or 7, that I think will impact the rest of the defense. Because when looking at the linebackers too, there's only a certain amount of spots you can have on the roster. You carry 6 or 7 there. Do you add another inside linebacker? There's a lot of pieces that are going to be sorted out here in the coming month.
Might be a lot of plug and play too, like who works where, when who's on the field too. So you might have a different D lineman, when a different linebackers in there. So I don't know. I think there's gonna be a lot of smoke and mirrors they're gonna throw out on defense, and I think it'll be interesting to see, especially in the preseason, what shakes out.
Yeah, especially looking at like outside linebacker. You have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith who are locked in.
Yeah, those
No
are
doubt
just
about it.
looks.
But behind them, you have Derek Tuska and Tuzar Skipper as your backups. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Taco Charlton was in the mix last year. He's gone now, but I think that's definitely one position where they look for veteran cut at the end of a training camp, because that does not, you have one injury there, you're toast. You don't want Derek Tuska playing a ton. Tuzar Skipper's already been cut by them. I don't know what they do there, but I think it's definitely a veteran signing that they'll have to do before the end of training camp.
How about do you think there'll be any battle between Devin Bush and Miles Jack? Do you think Miles Jack is gonna put some pressure on Devin Bush maybe, or
I mean, I hope Miles Jack helps Devin Bush elevate his game. From what I'm looking at and seeing so far, they're actually running, it's a rotation of Miles Jack, Devin Bush, and the freight train Bobby Spillane in there, who's apparently been looking good in coverage. Granted, it was in short, so I don't take too much stock in that. But those three guys, I think, are locks. You have Buddy Johnson, who didn't play a lot last year, but was a fourth-round pick by the Steelers out of Texas A&M. That's in the mix at inside linebacker. I think he sticks on the roster, no doubt about it. And then the other one that I think could stick, but this is more of a guy where he's probably better suited for the practice squad, is Mark Robinson, converted running back, played linebacker at Ole Miss, late round draft pick this year. The only reason I think he could stick if he has a good camp is they may have, reservations of last year's 6th-round pick, Quincy Roche from Miami, edge rusher. They thought they could get him to the practice squad, ended up getting signed by the Giants, was on their roster. So that's something I think I'd rather have someone like him, where even if he's a project, you really don't want to risk him getting signed by another team, especially if he has a strong camp, strong preseason, and then it's just a victim of the numbers game. But Mark Robinson's definitely another name to keep an eye on if you're a Steeler fan.
yeah, it's nice to keep someone like that around, especially if someone does get hurt or who knows what could happen. We saw who go down last year, Devin Bush, and we had to fill that void, right? Or was that 2 years ago?
2 years ago, Devin Bush.
Devin Bush.
Yeah, Joe Schobert, they brought him in, but he was a flop. He was here for a year, whatever. That's, you take a flyer on someone like that, you have to make a move better than any of the internal options you had at the time. So, yeah, I mean, inside linebacker, I think the depth, inside and outside linebacker, I think the depth's going to be one of the nicer things to watch during training camp with the battles. It should be intense. From what I've seen, Mark Robinson's an absolute dog. Hits hard, plays with an edge. That's the kind of guy the Steelers want. I'm assuming, if he keeps it up, they're going to find a spot for him on the 53-man.
Yeah. Moving on, cornerback position. We lost Hayden this offseason, so I mean that's a big loss.
Yeah.
So, is there anyone that will be able to fill that void? Do you see in your 53-man?
They signed Levi Wallace. They re-signed Akella Witherspoon, and you have Cam Sutton. Those are your top three corners. Levi Wallace, undrafted out of Alabama, kind of got overshadowed in Buffalo by Tre'Davious White, but he is a good cornerback. I think he'll fit in well here in Pittsburgh. So you have Levi Wallace, Cam Sutton, Akella Witherspoon. Arthur Mollett was solid last year, kind of taking over that Mike Hilton role, so he'll stick around. And then the fifth corner, this is where I'm going a little off the wall. I think James Pierre and Justin Lane both get cut, and one of the undrafted guys makes it right now. This is just a shot in the dark. I think Chris Steele, the undrafted rookie out of USC, he makes the 53-man roster as the fifth cornerback.
So who's going to be that guy that's going to lock down divisional opponents like Jamar Chase or now Amari Cooper? So is that scary, or is there anyone that can step up, do you think?
I mean, there's not really an elite cornerback. I think they have, I wouldn't say any of these quarterbacks, like if you're looking at a scale of A to F, they're A cornerbacks. But I think you have three solid B cornerbacks across the board that should be able to play well. And I think it'll honestly be dependent on the matchup. You could have Witherspoon, Wallace, Sutton, and you'd assume it would be Cam Sutton taking the top guy there. But, it all depends on the scheme, what's going on, what's on the field. But I think it'll be all three of those guys that'll be tasked at one point or another to lock down those big name receivers.
Well, I think cornerback's going to be the biggest red flag on the otherwise solid defense. There's just, I mean, granted, cornerback is probably the hardest position to play in the sport of football. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
hundred
I
percent.
mean, we've got a couple like studs in the division now, so I think the run game's going to be defended solid this year, but the pass games are to be weaker. But behind the cornerbacks now, it's move into the safeties if you have nothing left on the cornerbacks.
Yeah, nothing left on the corners, and obviously Minka's the guy at safety. Terrell Edmonds is re-signed, so there's your two starters. Miles Killebrew will be backing him up. He's battling a pec injury in camp right now, which could open the door for Carl Joseph, the veteran. They had him on the practice squad last year, former first-round pick, I believe first-round pick. And then they signed DeMonte Casey, which I think was an under-the-radar signing at safety. He'll be rotating in there and Trey Norwood, but I think that safety's pretty much set unless Carl Joseph makes a push. And, if Killebrew, can't battle back from the injury or Trey Norwood falters, that would be the only thing really. But Carl Joseph, I think, would be a victim of the number games. And I think you roll with Minka, Terrell Edmonds, Killebrew, Casey, and Norwood at safety.
I mean, as long as Minka's back for the season, he had a little bike injury, probably on the trails and took a nice spill on Dead Man's Curve or something. I don't know.
You can't be pulling a Biden right before training camp. That's just a tough scene right there.
You think it was an actual bike injury, or what happened there? You got any insight?
Bike injury. I'm sure it's nothing, but obviously you want to see him out there on the field when training camp starts. But what can you do?
Yeah, he'll probably be back in less than a week or something. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're probably resting him, make sure he's all right. Any other training camp comments, concerns, anything?
The Wizard of Oz just got paid 4 years, $20 million, I believe. Tied for the biggest kicker contract in NFL history with Justin Tucker. So he's locked up there. Presley Harvin, I think, wins at punter. There's not really much competition in camp for him. Christian Kuntz, the long snapper, you don't hear his name, which is always the best thing about a long snapper. So there's your three special team guys, and that's the first crack at the 53-man preview. And some of the names I think that'll be notable cuts for the Steelers. Miles Boykin was brought in from the Ravens. I just think he's a victim of the numbers game too. Kevin Rader at tight end, Jay Sternberg, another tight end. Anthony McFarland Jr., Chris Oladokun at quarterback, the 7th-round pick. I think he's better suited for the practice squad. Henry Mondo, fan favorite in Pittsburgh, but I don't want to see him on the field anymore. And then three of the bigger names, I think, aside from Lane and Pierre that get cut on defense, I think Marcus Allen's on the outside looking in. He already was to begin with. Pulled a hamstring in practice a couple days ago. They signed Jannard Avery, the veteran linebacker. Don't know if he'll make it. And Ulysses Gilbert, who's been hurt a lot. Good special teamer, but a lot of these younger guys are going to be good special teamers, and they're really looking to cut their teeth doing that. So you have to be healthy in order to put up the fight, and that's just what I'm looking at right now.
If you're one of those fringe guys, it's just unfortunate. You go down in training camp, that's where you're going to make your strides, make your case, and if you're not like a lock on the roster, you're probably on your way out. Which I'd hate to see Chico Hendricks go. That's my guy. The locker room dances, the post game Instagram lives, those will surely be missed to me. But
I'm a Marcus Allen fan too. Obviously a Penn State alum, so that gets some points in my book. But he's kind of at that point where he's not a safety and he's not a linebacker. He's that hybrid tweener type player where he started out safety, got moved to linebacker, didn't play well there. So if you can't play two positions even half decent, you're not really going to make the team unless there's injuries. So I think a lot of these guys will end up on the practice squad, but it'll be different for the Steelers having to cut, I think, from a lot of positions of strength where they normally wouldn't have to.
Yeah, so that'll be something new. But going back to Boswell, I didn't get to say this. You mentioned he did sign one of the bigger deals, less than Tucker, of course. But, I mean, it wasn't too long ago that he was literally getting death threats on Twitter and stuff like that. So it's nice to see him come along, and he had a great year last year. I can't remember him missing as much as he did that horrible year where people were tweeting death threats at him and stuff like that. So
he was dealing with an injury that year too, but it's a great story. Undrafted kicker out of Rice. The year he even signed on with the Steelers, he was like their 4th or 5th kicker they were going through from injuries and just subpar kicker. So it's just a great story, and he deserves every dollar he's getting paid.
Yeah, great comeback too. So, anything else on the Steelers training camp?
No, first day of pads, and after the first preseason games, when I'll have my next update to the 53-man roster prediction. So I'll put a pin in that for now.
Well, before we move on to, let's say, the Buccos, how about thoughts on training camp in general and the fans that are receiving autographs before and after? I mean, we've seen some posts where there's probably some preteen children sobbing at we've went to training camp and we've gotten autographs, but I can't remember. Yeah, but I can't remember like sobbing or like openly crying. No,
never. That's just an odd reaction. I mean,
yeah.
the worst part is adults pushing kids out of the way for autographs. That's the baseball equivalent of bringing a glove to the game and taking the outfielder's throws from kids. Like, grow up, Peter Pan. I don't know what to tell you.
Honestly, adult autograph seekers are probably right up there with those guys that bring a baseball mitt to the ballpark. If you're over, what age would you say is the cutoff between bringing a ball mitt? 16? If you're older than that?
No, I'd go lower. If you're anything above elementary, you should not be bringing a glove to a baseball game.
Like what? You want to get your like dainty little hands calloused?
No, autograph seekers and people like that at sports games, that's like the equivalent of Disney adults. Like, you just got to grow up at some point. I don't know what to tell you. You're lost if you're.
Who's that one dude that goes to baseball games? He literally has garbage cans full of baseballs in his house. He like does stats and like he sits in the spots. Like that guy, ultimate loser.
Research to see where the hitting chart is for where these guys are going to be hitting their home runs and in the pregame whatever batting practice, and focus on getting a date or something. Don't go diving into the analytics to get a batting practice home run ball.
If you don't give the ball to a kid, you're an ultimate loser too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm beeline to the first child. If I see someone do that, I'm booing them out of the stadium.
Oh, absolutely. You have to publicly shame those type of people. No doubt about it.
Yeah. So that's all I got on the Steelers. Autographs are always a tough scene, so especially at training camps. So moving on to a dark spot in Pittsburgh sports right now. The Pittsburgh Pirates. I think they've honestly won 2 games since the All-Star break, maybe.
That might be generous too.
And I called this. I called this last week. I said the Cubs are hot. I think they got swept by the Cubs. Yeah. Obviously, they got swept by the Phillies. The Phillies were in town this weekend. The Philly fanatic was absolutely strutting down the third baseline, blowing his kazoo all over the place. They took Robert's fan favorite. Yeah, so they dropped 4 to the Phillies too, and I mean the next series, are they still at home against the Brewers right now, or are they in Milwaukee?
I'm not sure, but I hope not. I mean, just get them out of town for the time being.
So they'll drop them all to the Brewers too, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But honestly, there were some ugly games. I think 2 8-run games. Granted that they did almost come back in one of those after, I think it was the anniversary of 20 years whenever Brian Giles hit a walk-off grand slam, and I was watching the game, and they compared Ben Gamble to Brian Giles. What are your thoughts on that?
Don't ever do that again. That's just not it. Brian Giles is one of the top 2 Pirates when I was growing up as a kid. It was him and Jason Kendall. That was it. A little bit older, Jason Bay and Freddie Sanchez were in the mix. Jack Wilson was always in the mix, but do not compare Ben Gamble to Brian Giles. That's just absurd.
I forget, but it's like comparing a pile of cow dung to $100 bill. Like,
there's no comparison to that.
But yeah, they lost the last 7. In my halfway All-Star break prediction, I went through the entire second half, and I said the over-under for the rest of their season wins was 20. That was my first thing I said. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a little generous. I said 30, maybe 25. But honestly, it's looking like 20 right now. And they have just as tough opponents are coming into town. They got the Blue Jays still.
Yeah, and their AAA roster is arguably, more fearsome than their Major League roster. You have Van Meter, I talked about this last week. You know, his mother wouldn't even pick him up from the movies, let alone Greg Brown on the broadcast trying to say he could be on the move at the deadline. Like the only place he should be on the move to is the unemployment line at this point. You're hitting 175, I believe it was Saturday night. Yoshi is hitting 189, and you got a couple other guys that are under 200 that are your everyday starters. That is just absurd. Meanwhile, you have guys like Jack Sawinski in AAA absolutely hitting the cover off the ball. Tucupita Marcano, another one that saw time in Pittsburgh, did well. You send him back down. There's a lot of guys in AAA that should be up, and even pitching wise, Colin Holderman, the guy they got for Vogelbach, he's been killing it in AAA. And the Pirates have, I believe, the worst bullpen in baseball. Why is he not up? Why is Roansy Contreras not in the rotation? What are you doing? It is just maddening. Play the young guys, lose with the young guys that at least have some potential than these veterans who absolutely suck and just give you nothing.
Like I hate to say it too, but usually the starting pitching is what kills us. And we've had 3 solid starts by Quintana, Mitch Keller, surprisingly, and Brubaker, where we just didn't have run support. So we need bats.
Yeah.
Our defense isn't. I mean, the defense was a little bad the other night, but mostly the pitching isn't bad. The bullpen is. But what do you see happening? The deadline's tomorrow. It's been radio silence since Vogelbach got traded. What do you see happening? Who's on the move? Who's staying that is thought to be on the move?
Looking at the roster, I think Kevin Newman. He's been hitting well since the All-Star break and coming off the injured list. I think he's someone that could go to a contender, be a good bench bat, defensive replacement for later innings like a lot of teams do. So Kevin Newman, Ben Gamel, same thing. He could be a 4th outfielder, platoon guy for a contender. Quintana, I think, is a no-brainer to move him. And then, I mean, honestly, you're looking at the roster. There's not much. I think Reynolds stays, but the one I think could be moving, David Bednar. You're seeing what these teams are getting for. You see what the Brewers got for Josh Hader, who's having a very off year for his standards and just performance. If you're the Pirates, what do you need a good closer for when you're either down by 10 runs in the 9th or you're losing games 2-1? You have no need for him. If you're truly rebuilding and doing what you're saying you're going to do, he's not someone that fits in there. He's someone that could help fortify with AAA and major league talent. That's what, if you trade Bednar, that's what you should be getting. You can sign some relievers in the offseason because their bullpen is not good. But I'd say if a team calls you and it's an offer you can't refuse, you have to pull the trigger.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like last week, I was saying Bednar is going to stay, but I think it was today I saw what the Cubs got for their closer. They got the Yankees' 7th prospect. Like like you said, if you're the Pirates, when do we need a closer? That's like us having a good closer is like living in Antarctica and owning a pair of swim trunks. Like it's not practical.
No.
And it always seems like we always have a good closer too. So honestly, David Bednar, great story. Love the Pittsburgh guy, the renegade.
Yeah.
But I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm going to say guys like David Bednar, they come a dime a dozen. We're going to find another one. Why have a closer when you never use him? You're just throwing his arm out anyway. Might as well get something, get a few pieces for him. Teams are overpaying, so
and
get that bag.
And they don't want Pirates fans, which some point down the road when we do our rankings of like the dumbest fan bases in sports, Pirates fans, I hate to say it, are just like top tier. Just you believe a team that has Bob Nutting as the owner that they're going to spend money and rebuild. And it's been the same song and dance. I'm 28 years old and I've seen 3 winning seasons in my lifetime. It's the same old charade, same old song and dance. And yet these people still go out there, buy season tickets, go to a ton of games. I'll maybe go to 1 or 2 a year just because it is the best view in baseball. It's always good to go to a game. It's just the atmosphere. The team's usually horrible, whatever. But if you keep believing that, if you keep believing that Bob Nutting cares about you or cares about the Pirates, I'm going to sell you some oceanfront property in like North Dakota because you're the most gullible type of fan there is. And half the reason Pirates fans don't want to trade David Bednar is because he's from around here. Like he is a yinzer. I get that, but he's a closer that's gonna throw his arm off. You trade him when the value's highest because even if you're rebuilding, you really don't have a need for him on the roster right now. Like
No.
you're not doing anything with him.
So I think next week around this time we'll be talking about what we're getting for him. So
Yeah.
what time's the deadline tomorrow? Is it midnight or is it weird like the NBA where it's like 5 p.m.?
I'm pretty sure it's 3 or 4. It's in the late afternoon deadline. Yeah.
All right. Well, the news there is the Pirates suck, but they keep on nutting. Bob nutting, that is. Well, at least they put a nice jungle gym in center field, and the concessions are all new too. So that's all I got there. But I said also I think Bednar's gone, Quintana's gone, Newman's gone, and I honestly think Gamble might be gone too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even though he is horrible, and I swear 9 times out of 10, a fly ball's in the outfield where you don't need to dive, and he ends up on the ground. He's like a mop.
I mean, Gamble was doing great before he got hurt and went on the IL, so I don't really put too much stock in it. It's different, I'm sure, for MLB players with the trade rumors going and trying to, come off the IL, and you have those eyes on you, a little bit of extra pressure, to maybe perform well, or obviously to perform well, but the whispers of getting traded to a contender, I'm sure, that can mess with a player's mind for better or worse. But I don't mind Ben Gamble. I think he's okay. But the craziest stat from this weekend, for one last point for me from the Pirates, their 2 through 6 hitters were a combined 1 for 48 going into Sunday's game. In like the last games, 1 for 48. That's basically, you could put them up there blindfolded. That's basically swinging at a pinata. Like
Saturday was horrible. Saturday was horrible. It was the 4th inning, and the Phillies struck out 7 batters.
Yeah.
They were just like, the ball was low and like way out of the zone, and they were just swinging like it was a pinata at a birthday party. Like They might as well have had blindfolds on and just walked up to the plate because it was ridiculous what they were swinging at.
At this point, you may as well. It would honestly be more entertaining to just have them play dizzy bat and try and swing at a pitch.
Yeah.
Because you'd get the same results. 1 for 48. Your 2 through 6 hitters who are supposed to be the best hitters on your team, 1 for 48. That's pathetic.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, on a high note for the Pirates, I guess if you can call it that, is Saturday was the first sellout since 2015, 2016 when the Dodgers were in town. So that was, I guess, all right. But they should have won that game. Was that the game when they went into extras?
And O'Neal Cruz
got picked off at second. I mean, we're just a bad team finding ways to lose. And Michael Chavis, you're throwing the ball around. Everyone's throwing the ball away. It's like a Seattle supermarket, and they're throwing fish around. I mean, come on. Like, what are we doing here? It's the vets that are throwing it away. O'Neal Cruz, you can't get picked off at second. That's just young guy error. But I mean, throwing the ball carelessly around, that's like baseball 101 at that point. Like, just get the out, keep the guy at third, trust your pitcher. Like, you're going to get a guy at second, obviously in the bottom of the 10th, but too bad O'Neal Cruz got picked off anyway. So
whatever.
That's all I really got on the Pirates. We could rant all day about how bad they are. They're like a little brother. Like, you can make fun of them all you want, but as soon as another fan base makes fun of them, and that's when it gets bad. So
absolutely. And yet the mood has to be right to just absolutely roast them. Like tonight, just getting into this little rule about roasting like the dumbest fans. Like, I could go on for hours, and then there'll be stretches where it's Pirate baseball. They're your hometown team. You can just watch them. They're somewhat enjoyable. But then they put together stretches like this where it just like clicks, and it reminds you that it's a poverty franchise with a bottom line.
It was a decent season so far, and like I think today's the mark where I'm throwing in the towel. Like, It's chalked. It's chalked. Just call it a season. Bring up the young guys. That's all I gotta say. I could rant all day, but that's all I got on them. All right. Anything else on baseball before we move on?
No.
R.I.P. Pirates 2022 season. We're calling it a season. 7-game skid. All right. Penn State football. What do you got?
P.J. Mustafer, him, Sean Clifford, and I believe the long snapper all were put on preseason award list. Watch, whatever players to watch. So Nothing too much on Penn State. They had a receiver decommit from them. I believe he committed to Georgia, 3-star receiver Yazid Haynes. But they also are trying to get a quarterback recruit now that was up there this weekend, Jackson Smallick. He's a Tulane commit. I believe he's from Iowa, 3-star quarterback. And they had a pretty good quarterback decommit a couple weeks ago. So they're looking to add one more quarterback to the recruiting class for next year.
Yeah,
Nothing else. It's status quo until camp gets going for them.
I didn't have too much on them. All I saw was this week they were at, I think, Michigan State for the Big Ten Conference. Like you said, I think Clifford was there and PJ Mustipher were there. Clifford looking like an absolute unit in that great suit, all-time suit. Looking good. Hopefully he plays as good as he looked. But they were making fun of Mustipher a little bit, saying he failed his, I think, conditioning test or whatever. So that was pretty funny. And then I think James Franklin was talking about how Penn State's at the doorstep and they're looking for a college football playoff run this year.
They've been on the doorstep for like 5 years now. Ain't gonna happen under James Franklin.
But I think today, I think they're about a week behind the NFL. I think they're reported today for their, I guess you could say, preseason training camp. So I think they were in no pads today, along with. Are you done with Penn State? I'm done with talking about. I have nothing else. It's pretty quiet over there.
Yeah.
But we could go into Pitt a little bit. This is usually Robert's section, but I don't have much on them either. They got a few guys named to preseason awards lists, and I saw they reported today as well to their camp. And other than that, all I saw was Narduzzi was talking about NIL needing more guards and sanctions and stuff. So it's the Wild West out there. I think he's still bitter about Jordan Addison.
Absolutely.
So that's all I got from that. But yep, college football, it's basically reporting for training camp. Nothing too new until pretty much a season starts. They don't really have preseason games.
Yep.
It's just basically those throwaway games where they play like just smaller D1 schools. So
Penn State kicks off against Purdue this year on a Thursday night, so they're going right into conference play right off the bat. I think that's a big trap game for Penn State, against Purdue on a Thursday night.
So are we going to get a 53-man roster for them too, or a depth chart thing, or what?
I can put one together. I mean, I'll look at it and I'll see who's been playing well, and once I see some stuff out of camp. But it's pretty much solid on the offense, and the defense will be really the only thing for Penn State. Linebacker, corner, safety. There's gonna be a lot of moving pieces there too. There'll really be some battles there to see who's on the top of the depth chart.
Yeah, I think like that's what we should do on one of the next episodes, is maybe have one for a full schedule prediction for the Steelers, maybe, then a full schedule prediction we could split the NFL into one, then have like a Penn State one too whenever Roberts is back. So that's a future idea. Anything else college football wise? That's a pretty silence all around. Yeah.
Let's head to the Penguins.
The Pens, baby. A little bit of interest here. Other than this, it's pretty quiet. We have Heinen back on a, I think, 1-year deal, $1 million. That's a steal. He played well last year. I think he took a deal to be able to play on a contender. So, what are your thoughts on that?
He said he had an offer from Winnipeg that was around $2 to $3 million. So he turned down a couple million to play for the Penguins, and that just speaks to the Penguins' culture. Perennial contender. Obviously, how do you pass up the chance to play another year with Crosby, Malkin, Letang? You see what they're doing with the team. This is their window. I think a lot of players would take, and we saw that this year. A lot of them took less money per year to stay together and try and go for another cup. But the interesting thing is they're now over the cap, I believe, by $1.5 to $2 million. Yeah, so someone's going to be on their way out sooner or later before the season starts. And who do you think it will be? Any predictions?
I'm thinking Kapanen, they're going to have a reunite with Rutherford. So that's my that. I don't know about you. Dumoulin, or do you think he's one of the defensemen?
It could be Kapanen, or they still have that logjam on defense. So look for a defenseman to get shipped out, and possibly Kapanen. But we'll have to get our resident hockey expert Luke Werner on here to break that down. State champion, beat up on Sam Lafferty in high school. So 2 pretty big accolades right there. We'll have to have him on soon.
Yeah, but in that front, I think Kapanen's gone. But just a tidbit of history while we're still on the Penguins, was it 17 years ago, I think 2 days ago, that Sid was drafted. So we've gotten some good years out of him.
Yeah.
And then the Penguins news was short, so I have 2 tidbits. That, and then maybe like a nice little Easter egg was Evgeny Malkin's son's birthday cake. Maybe I'm looking too far into this, but they had a 4th Stanley Cup on it, so maybe we're getting a season preview, 4th Cup. It was Lion King themed, and the monkey at the beginning was holding up the Stanley Cup. So I think we're getting a 4th Cup.
4th Cup incoming this year. Book it down. Put the money
Right
on
here first.
Yeah, right there.
And then anything else, Penguins?
No, I think you know what time it is, though.
I got one more thing. So
Ooh.
I got NBA. Do you got anything on NBA? I just got one tidbit. There's not much on NBA until, as a Nets fan, I see Kyrie and KD traded. So other than that, I wanted to give a big rest in peace to NBA legend Bill Russell. 11-time champion, multiple-time MVP, literally has the Finals MVP trophy named after him. Good athlete, even better person. So rest in peace, Bill Russell, absolute legend.
Absolutely.
But on that note, we're going to move on to our new segment. It's the buzz around town, the idiot of the week. So who are we starting with here?
I think we should save the best for last. So I'll go with your nomination first.
I have my nomination. So Youngzers, we are a Pittsburgh-based podcast, and this weekend I was at none other than the Pittsburgh Zoo. Absolutely crowded weekend with families. Got to see some nice animals, but we're walking up this one path and it zigzags a little bit, and there's like 2 fences. So my nominee for Idiot of the Week is this guy that looked like Chumlee from Pawn Stars with a longer beard. He runs up a hill through all this bush, like all these bushes and brush and trees, and he jumps over a fence in between 2. And it looks like he's in an enclosure. His family's looking at him. They're like yelling at him like to get out of there and stuff. Luckily, there's no animal in there. I think it was like a former like small like little exhibit. But he's standing in the middle, and the only thing he says is, "I don't think I should be in here." And then he just runs out the other way. So I mean, we could have had another wild dogs incident, another Harambe incident there. So that's my idiot of the week right there, is Chumlee looking zoo guy. So we'll have an Instagram poll for our 2 nominations. So we'll vote. So we'll do that and maybe a Twitter poll. So who's your nomination, Andrew?
I mean, I think this is another one that it's just the overall nomination for the weekend. To save anything, we'll just call this person Rio. So no one knows who it is. But Rio, 21 years old, he's talking to us.
I golfed with him yesterday, and he was bragging all round about this.
So the Freeport International Invitational, for the people that don't know about this, it's a local baseball tournament that's usually held every year in Freeport. Teams come in from all over the world to play. A lot of local teams play against each other. It's just a good, a nice tournament to have, everyone getting to know each other from different areas, stuff like that. So it's a lot of different high schoolers and, such like that, younger kids. Junior high kids. So, Rio, 21 years old, bragging about going 2 for 3, stealing bags, laughing about it. We come to find out he buys a new bat, buys new cleats. We come to find out he's playing against the French team, and they're 13 years old.
And he's bragging about 10 running these kids. He's almost a decade older than them, and he's absolutely tagging bags and taking liberties at them. So, Rio, you're our idiot of the week, buddy. So, congratulations on the nomination. Hopefully, you don't get idiot of the month, but I could see you getting a couple nominations here on out. So,
well, he also strengthened his idiot of the week candidacy today, where yesterday you were golfing with him and he shot a 53, correct?
Yeah, 53.
One of the easier courses around. So he goes out by himself today at Lenape, shoots an 86 by himself, no one there to witness. I don't know how you can shave 20 strokes off in a night, but it's probably one of those ones where it's basically one of those fake ads on Google where it says, shave 20 strokes off your golf game. Like club pros hate him. That's Rio. We don't know what he's doing out there on the course. He's out early. No one could witness it. No one could witness it. No one can attest it. Everyone's calling BS. So we don't know, but the idiot of the week, as the front runner, it's probably Rio.
It's Rio. But
The
he
other,
also,
yeah,
the other guy, that's just a random dude. But Rio, also yesterday at our little golf round we played, he said something about Tiger Woods' brother. And I was like, I didn't know he had a brother. And he says his name was Enda Woods. So that's why I nominated him. But I guess playing against 13-year-olds and running up the score could make you idiot of the week. So that's all I got to say about it.
and the honorable mention for idiot of the week too was I was at Roland Saturday night watching the Pirate game. You know, it's a bad night already. The Steelers are looking Pirates. I'm out of it right now. The Pirates are looking bad. I'm trying to enjoy a lobster roll. Everything's calm there, and then someone just starts throwing up at the bar, literally 5 feet from the restrooms. Made no attempt to go to the restroom. Just sat at the bar, throwing up on their own feet. Everyone's disgusted. And, you know, people are trying to close up shop, and you got this going on. It's not a party bar or anything like that. It's literally a seafood place. So I'm trying to enjoy this lobster roll, and we got all this commotion going on. So that's my honorable mention for idiot of the week. If you're gonna do that, just walk 5 feet, go to the bathroom, do something. Yeah. But you just can't be doing that. Tough scene.
Yeah, so that's our new category, idiot of the week. So make sure you get those votes in. I got nothing else on it. Do you have any other topics? Anything you want to discuss?
No, we'll have some more Steeler training camp update next week. We'll probably go over the Pirates deadline moves, and
yep.
You know, we'll have to stick around for if anybody has any fan nominations for Idiot of the Week. We'll have to take those into consideration for next week, but get the voting in for this week's winner.
DM us on Twitter if you have any nominations, or even just comment on the YouTube video. Yep. So next week's episode, like you said, it's probably going to be Pirates deadline heavy. Any Steelers news, full pad practices, anything the Penguins may do, which probably won't be much. News coming from Pitt and Penn State football, and then next week's idiot of the week. So that'll be pretty exciting. Remember, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube. This week, our YouTube does have video, so you'll see us actually for once. And then, subscribe to us on Spotify. I'm trying to get us on Apple Podcasts, but I don't know how that's going to work. We're closing in on an hour. The Pirates are about to kick off against the Brewers. First pitch 7:05 allegedly. So hopefully they break that losing streak. That's all I got. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Speaking for Andrew and I, and double R squared in Indianapolis, this is Youngzers Pod. See you guys next week.